Tonight, step quietly into a medieval world where love cannot be spoken aloud. Behind oak doors, beneath candlelit windows, and along muddy pilgrim roads, secret messages pass in blue ribbons, hidden letters, and stolen glances. In a time when marriage could be decided by family duty, land, and coin, even one whispered promise could change a life forever. So before we enter this shadowed tale of forbidden affection, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy calm medieval stories like this. Now, settle in, dim the lights, and let the untold story of secret medieval romance begin. Hey guys, tonight you find yourself in the last blue light before winter dark, standing before the gate of a small walled town where cold stone sweats beneath your fingertips. Damp straw clings to the hem of your cloak, smoke gathers in the rafters of nearby cottages, and distant bells tremble through river mist. Mud cakes your boots so thickly that each step feels like a private argument with the earth. A horse breathes white clouds beside a torchlit post, and the guard watching you looks as if he has personally been disappointed by every traveller since Michaelmas. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. You probably would not last a week out here, not because you lack courage, but because the bread is hard, the blankets are thin, and everyone seems to know 7 ways to accuse a stranger of bad luck. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while the bells fade over the rooftops, tell us where you're watching from, and what the local time is where your own night has found you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge beneath the gatehouse, ducking your head though the arch is high enough, because the whole place seems built to make a traveller feel watched. Above you, a murder hole sits dark and square in the ceiling stones, and though no one is dropping anything through it tonight, you still give it a respectful glance. It is good manners, really, to be polite to architecture that has opinions about boiling water. The town closes around you in narrow lanes. Timbered houses lean over the street as if trading secrets from upper windows. Rushlights glow behind horn panes. Somewhere nearby, a woman beats dust from a wool blanket, and somewhere farther off, a cooper hammers at a barrel with slow, hollow knocks that mingle with the bells. The air smells of wet wool, old smoke, horse dung, onions, and the yeasty comfort of ale. It is not perfume, exactly, but after a day on the road, it has the deep sincerity of shelter. You're not alone. A small brown dog with one bent ear has followed you since the outer ditch, stepping neatly around puddles as if it has far better breeding than most nights. No one can quite agree whether such dogs follow strangers for crumbs, affection, or the simple pleasure of knowing everyone's business. This one looks at you as though it has already judged your boots and found them tragic. You pass beneath a painted sign showing St. Agnes holding a lamb, though the lamb's face has weathered into something closer to a worried turnip. Beside the sign stands an oak door bound with black iron straps. Its threshold is swept clean, which tells you the house belongs to someone careful, prosperous, or watched by neighbours with too much spare attention. A beeswax candle burns in the small upper window. Its flame wavers once, then steadies. That is when you see the letter. It lies half hidden beneath the door, tucked just beyond the splash of muddy street water, sealed with a small round press of dark red wax. You might have missed it if the candlelight had not caught the wax and made it gleam like a drop of pomegranate juice. The seal is not grand enough for a lord, not clumsy enough for a tradesman, and not plain enough for harmless business. It bears the impression of a tiny bird, perhaps a swallow, perhaps a dove, though in this poor light it may also be a chicken with ambitions. You bend slowly, because in a medieval town there is no casual bending. Someone always sees. A shutter across the lane shifts, the dog sits, a cart horse exhales. You lift the letter between two cold fingers and feel the warmth left by whoever carried it. The parchment is fine, not the rough scrap used for debts or kitchen tallies. It smells faintly of wax, rain, and something sweet, maybe dried lavender, the sort placed in chests to keep moths from wool and melancholy from linens, though the second use is less officially recorded. Inside the house, boards creak. You should leave the letter where it is. That is the sensible path, and sensible paths are famous for saving people from trouble, marriage negotiations, and suspicious abbots. Yet the town seems to hold its breath. The bells from the little church strike again, slow and soft, marking the hour of curfew, when honest folk should be indoors and dishonest folk should at least pretend to be. In many towns, the ringing of the curfew bell is not merely a reminder but a command: cover the hearth fire, bolt the shutters, stop wandering about like a loose goat with plans. Still, the letter rests in your hand. Some swear that lovers in such towns send messages by bakers' boys, laundresses, musicians, or old women who sell eggs and hear everything. Others claim the safest courier is a child too young to read, though that plan has obvious flaws, chiefly that children shout whatever they are told not to shout. But this letter has not come by a loud child. It has been placed with care under an oak door after dusk, at the hour when faces blur and secrets grow soft edges. The wax seal is unbroken. You turn it once, and in the torchlight you notice a thread caught beneath the fold blue silk, thin as a vein, knotted twice, a love token, perhaps, or a warning, even now. It is hard to tell whether medieval hearts are more romantic or simply more willing to complicate an evening. The door opens before you can decide. Only a crack, narrow as a knife cut in shadow. A young woman's hand appears first, pale from indoor work, the fingers ink-stained at the side as if she writes more than she should. She wears no jewels, only a narrow wool sleeve trimmed in faded green. She does not gasp. She does not snatch. She simply pauses, seeing the letter in your hand, and beyond her in the candlelit dark you hear the low murmur of an older voice asking who stands there. You offer the letter back. For one heartbeat, her fingers brush yours, cold and quick. Then the sealed parchment vanishes into the house, and the door closes with the soft weight of oak returning to its place. No thanks, no explanation, no name, only the smell of beeswax, lavender, and smoke left behind. Across the lane, the shutter that moved before settles shut. The dog rises, gives a tiny sneeze, and trots onward as if this is precisely the sort of thing that happens every Thursday. Perhaps it is. In a town where marriages are bargained over dowries, fields, family honour, and the number of decent pots a household owns. Romance must learn to walk quietly. It slips under doors. It hides in ribbons, glances, songs, and saints' days. It trusts darkness because daylight belongs to everyone. You pull your cloak tighter and continue down the lane toward the monastery guest house, where travellers may sleep for a coin, a prayer, or a convincing expression of humility. Behind you, the candle in the upper window goes out. Ahead, another bell begins to speak from the abbey, deeper than the town church, calling the night toward its next hour. And somewhere behind one oak door, a sealed secret has opened. You follow the deeper bell through the narrowing lanes, letting its slow note guide you toward the monastery wall. The sound rolls over roofs and chimneys, over sleeping hens and bundled apprentices, over puddles that hold the last trembling scraps of dusk. It seems less like music than like a hand laid gently on the back of the town, pressing it into quiet. By the time you reach the abbey gate, the sky has darkened to the colour of watered ink, and the stones before you shine with mist. The monastery guest house stands just inside the outer court, not grand, not poor, but serious in the way of places that expect discomfort to improve the soul. Its door is low, its latch cold, and its threshold scattered with rushes that smell faintly of straw, damp boots, and yesterday's pottage. A lay brother lets you in with a candle held high. His face is long, mild, and suspicious. The face of a man who has spent years watching travellers try to explain why they arrived after curfew with no money and a chicken. You give your name, or at least the name you choose to use tonight, and he marks it on a wax tablet with a little bone stylus. In many houses, such tablets are used for accounts, kitchen lists, and temporary notes, because parchment is expensive and memory is unreliable, especially after ale. The brother squints at your cloak, your boots, then at the small brown dog that has somehow slipped in behind you, and now sits beneath a bench as if it has taken vows. Not yours, his expression seems to say. You offer a shrug. The dog offers nothing. He leads you into a long, low room where travellers sleep on pallets filled with straw that has known many backs and kept no secrets. The rafters are soot black, and the smoke from the central hearth rises reluctantly, as if even smoke dislikes monastery discipline. A pot hangs above the fire, breathing out the humble smell of barley, leeks, and something that may once have had ambitions of being meat. Along the wall, 2 merchants doze in fur-lined cloaks. A pilgrim woman rubs her feet near the embers, her hat pinned with little badges from shrines a scallop shell, a stamped pewter saint, a tiny ampulla said to hold holy water, though no one can quite agree whether it came from a blessed spring or from a very practical innkeeper's well. You lower yourself beside the fire and warm your hands. Your fingers still remember the brief touch of the young woman at the oak door, the cold quickness of her hand, the ink stain at the side of it. It is strange how a tiny thing can remain in the skin after the thing itself has vanished. The guest house smells of wool drying slowly, damp straw, wood smoke, and the sour comfort of bodies safe from the road. It is, in its own severe way, almost cosy, provided one does not ask too much of the word cosy. A novice brings you a wooden bowl of thin pottage and a piece of coarse bread. The bread resists your teeth with the quiet confidence of a small building. You soften it in the broth and listen, somewhere beyond the guest house, within the cloister. The monks move toward the next office. Their sandals whisper over stone. A door opens. A chant rises and falls, not loud enough to understand, but steady enough to settle the breath. Monastery bells do not simply mark time. They divide the night into obedient pieces, as if darkness itself must keep a schedule. Near the hearth, a hooded traveller leans toward a merchant and murmurs of a house near St. Agnes's sign. You do not turn your head at once. A useful traveller learns to listen with the side of the face. The merchant grunts. The traveller says the house belongs to a wool factor with 3 daughters, or perhaps 2 daughters and a widowed niece. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. There is talk of a proposed marriage, a cousin with land, a steward with debts, and someone from the castle household who's been seen too often near the river stairs. The dog lifts its head. You dip your bread again, very calmly, as if bread has suddenly become fascinating, The hooded traveller says another thing, softer, a letter, a seal, a bird in wax. At that, one of the monks passing through the room pauses just long enough for the candle in his hand to gutter. He is older than the novice, with a narrow mouth and eyes that seem trained to find stains on soles and tablecloths alike. You notice ink on his thumb, dark beneath the nail. A scribe, perhaps, or a brother who handles accounts, or a man who reads what is not meant for him. Some swear that in monasteries letters pass safer than coins, because monks are sworn to obedience and silence. Others say that is exactly why letters are dangerous there, for silence has many rooms, and obedience is not always given to the person who wrote the message. You watch the suspicious monk continue toward the inner door. Before he leaves, his gaze drifts once toward you, once toward the dog, and once toward the mud drying on your boots. It is impressive, you think sleepily, how mud can become evidence without ever being asked. The guest house settles deeper into night. The pilgrim woman mutters a charm over her blistered heel, crossing herself after each word to make the old habit look more respectable. A merchant snores into his cloak. The novice returns to sprinkle fresh rushes near the doorway, because rushes on stone floors keep the cold down, soak spills, hide crumbs, and probably conceal enough mysteries to embarrass a bishop. Above the hearth, sparks climb and vanish into smoke. You lie back on your straw pallet, your wool blanket pulled to your chin. It smells of lanolin, dust, and many travellers who have done their best. Through the wall comes the faint scratching of quills from the scriptorium, where some brother still copies holy words by candlelight, letter by patient letter. Perhaps the ink-stained young woman has learned from such hands. Perhaps her secret letter was copied by one of them. Perhaps the bird seal means nothing at all. Even now, it's hard to tell whether the town is protecting a romance or preparing to crush it beneath good manners. Just as your eyes grow heavy, you hear footsteps outside the guest-house door, not the broad shuffle of a sleepy monk, but careful steps, stopping, listening, moving again. The dog beneath the bench does not bark. It only watches the door with bright, serious eyes. Then something slides under the threshold, not a letter, not quite, but a thread of blue silk, damp with mist, knotted twice. The same knot. You keep still beneath your blanket while the bells fade through the stones, and the monastery holds its breath around you. You do not reach for the blue silk at once. In a monastery guest house, even the floor seems capable of reporting suspicious behaviour. So you lie beneath your wool blanket and let your breathing stay slow, while the hearth sighs, the merchants snore, and the little brown dog keeps watch with the grave patience of a court judge who's accepted payment in bones. The thread lies just inside the threshold, darkened by mist, its two knots barely visible in the firelight. It looks too small to trouble anyone, which is exactly how many troubles prefer to begin. A full army announces itself with drums and banners. A secret romance, being more practical, arrives as damp string under a door. After a while, the careful footsteps outside fade toward the outer court. Only then do you rise, as softly as straw allows, which is not very softly at all. Straw has the manners of a gossiping aunt. You tuck the thread into the fold of your sleeve and settle down again, but sleep refuses to come near. Instead, your mind returns to the oak door, the wax bird, the young woman's ink-stained fingers, and the monk with the narrow mouth who paused when he heard mention of a letter. No one can quite agree whether love makes people foolish or merely reveals that they were already foolish and waiting for an excuse. Out here, foolishness has consequences. A girl promised to one household may ruin two others by looking too kindly at a third. A man with debts may try to marry upward with a smile and a borrowed cloak. A servant may carry a message for a penny, then sell its meaning for two. The heart may beat privately, but in a medieval town, nothing else does. By morning, the guest house stirs beneath the first pale bell. The lay brother moves among pallets with a candle and a cough, because apparently mercy is best delivered before dawn, and with no warning. Travellers sit up slowly, wrapped in blankets, blinking like owls dragged into legal proceedings. The pilgrim woman pins her badges back on her hat. The merchants argue over a pack strap. The dog stretches, yawns, and follows you to the doorway as if this was always the arrangement. Outside, the Abbey Court is washed in cold grey. Frost clings to the edges of barrels, and smoke lifts from the bakehouse chimney. A monk crosses with a basket of coarse loaves, each one marked with a small slash before baking so the crust will not burst. Even bread, it seems, receives more planning than most journeys. Near the stable, a boy forks damp hay into a manger while murmuring a charm against horses biting in winter, which may be less superstition and more optimism with rhythm. You leave the abbey by the side gate and follow the muddy lane down toward the town's alehouse, where warmth, rumour, and breakfast all live under the same roof. The sign above the door shows a painted boar holding a cup. The boar looks pleased with itself. This is fair, because the alehouse is already doing better than most respectable institutions by smelling of toasted bread, onions, smoke, and something frying in fat. Inside, the room is low and smoky, with rushes spread over the floor and benches polished by years of tired bodies. A woman with red hands moves between tables carrying wooden cups of small ale. Thin enough for morning and safer than doubtful water, a pot of pottage bubbles near the hearth, on a trencher of stale bread. Someone has laid smoked fish, and two men discuss it as solemnly as if choosing a king. You sit near the wall, where you can see the door without seeming to see too much. The dog curls at your feet. The ale is sour, warm, and deeply reassuring. It tastes like something that has survived its own mistakes. Around you, the town wakes in layers, carters stamping mud from boots, market women counting eggs in wicker baskets, a tinker with pins and buckles spread in a cloth, and a blind fiddler tuning one string with infinite patience and very limited results. Songs begin softly, not ballads shouted for feasts, but half-sung morning scraps, verses about distant ladies, false shepherds, loyal knights, and maids who apparently spend most of their time dropping ribbons near wells. Some swear that such songs carry messages when letters become too dangerous. A certain line may mean meat at the orchard, a change in melody may mean your father suspects, a repeated verse may mean the monk is listening, which is a useful warning. Though admittedly difficult to rhyme. The alewife places more bread before you and glances at your sleeve. For a moment you wonder if the blue silk shows, but she only nods toward the dog. He followed old Martin last week. Her look says, though she says nothing aloud. Then a fishmonger. Now you. Poor beast has no standards. In fairness, neither does the road. At the next table, two apprentices play at dice, using knuckle bones worn smooth from handling. One loses a farthing and accuses the other of blowing on the bones for luck. That is a common enough belief. Breath, touch, and spoken words can tilt fortune, provided fortune is not already busy elsewhere. The alewife cuffs them both without looking, which proves that some powers are more reliable than charms. Then you see her, not the young woman from the oak door, but a maid in a brown gown with a white coif pinned low. She enters carrying a basket of folded linen, as if she belongs to laundry, errands, and nobody's attention. Yet she pauses by the fiddler and hums one line of the song he's been failing to tune. The fiddler catches it, repeats it, and the room barely notices. You do. The line is about a swallow returning by the river. Your fingers close around the cup, a swallow, perhaps, pressed in wax, a bird seal beneath an oak door, a thread of blue silk with 2 knots. The maid sets down her basket by the hearth, and from its folded linen slips a narrow ribbon of the same blue, just visible before she tucks it away. Even now, it is hard to tell whether you're witnessing a romance, a warning, or the most overcomplicated laundry route in Christendom. The suspicious monk enters not long after, hood low, hands tucked into his sleeves. Conversation does not stop, but it changes texture. People become very interested in cups, fish, sleeves, and the fire. He buys no ale. He only stands near the door, listening to the fiddler's harmless song. At your feet, the dog lifts its head and gives one soft, unimpressed huff. You finish your ale slowly, because haste has no place in a room where every glance has learned to wear a disguise. Outside, carts creak toward the market square, bells begin again over the rooftops, and the blue ribbon vanishes into the maid's basket like a secret sinking underwater. You leave the alehouse when the room grows too crowded for comfortable listening. Morning has opened fully now, pale and wet over the town, and the market square gathers itself with the slow confidence of a creature that knows everyone must eventually come to it. Carts grind through ruts. Donkeys object to existence. A boy runs past with 2 loaves under one arm and a turnip in his teeth, which is not the most graceful arrangement, but in winter one does not criticize efficiency. The square lies before the church, where the stone steps are damp and the carved saints above the porch wear old rain-like sorrow. Stalls rise beneath patched awnings wool, onions, iron nails, ribbons, smoked eels, cheap knives, clay cups, combs of bone, beeswax candles, and little twists of herbs tied with thread. Market tolls are collected beneath the watch of a bailiff with a tablet and a face built for disappointment. Every cart entering the town owes something, even if it is only a coin. A promise, or the familiar medieval tax of standing in mud while a man argues about onions. You move among the stalls with your cloak drawn close. The brown dog trots ahead, sniffing beneath tables with professional seriousness. He pauses near a basket of smoked fish, considers a life of crime, and is discouraged by the fishwife's ladle. She does not even look down. This suggests long practice. There are colours everywhere, though winter tries to dull them madder red strips of cloth, green glass beads, yellow apples wrinkled from storage, blue ribbons folded like small pieces of sky. At one stall, a ribbon seller displays lengths of silk, linen, and dyed wool on a board. Young servants drift past without seeming to pause. A girl touches a green ribbon, then a blue one, then walks away with empty hands. A man pretending to inspect buckles watches her reflection in a polished spoon. No one says anything. Some swear that colours speak more honestly than people. Blue may mean constancy, green may mean new desire, red may mean boldness, though no one can quite agree whether these meanings belong to poets, lovers, or merchants hoping to sell more ribbon. In some villages, a ribbon tied to a sleeve during a feast can mark favour. In others, the same gesture can cause 3 mothers, 2 priests, and half a manor court to develop urgent opinions. Love, your learning, does not lack feeling. It lacks privacy. You stop at a table covered with pilgrim badges. Pewter saints lie in rows, each stamped thin and shining St. James with a shell, St. Catherine with her wheel, St. Valentine with a face so worn he might be anyone's disappointed uncle. The vendor, a narrow woman with quick eyes, tells a passing couple that a badge worn near the heart may guard affection during absence. Then she tells a sailor it may protect against drowning. Then she tells a shepherd it may keep wolves from ewes. The saints here work hard and appear to accept broad assignments. Beside the badges, another stall sells herbs and charms rosemary for remembrance, rue for protection, betony for headaches, fennel for digestion, lavender for linen chests, and little cloth packets stitched shut with red thread. A grandmotherly woman with 3 teeth and the calm authority of a bishop explains that dried verbena under a pillow may draw true dreams of the person one will marry. She adds, after a pause, that it also keeps fleas away. This is the sort of practical romance that survives winter. You think of the letter smelling faintly of lavender. Perhaps it came from a chest. Perhaps it was meant to smell sweet. Perhaps the scent itself was a message, because lavender says cleanliness, care, and the hope that moths will not eat your future. At the far edge of the market, the maid with the linen basket appears again. She moves lightly between stalls, buying nothing, touching almost everything. She pauses at the ribbon seller's board and lays down 1 small coin. The seller cuts a narrow length of blue. Then, with no change of expression, adds a shorter white thread and folds both into brown scrap cloth. The maid places the bundle beneath her linen. The suspicious monk stands by the church steps. He's not buying ribbons. This is unsurprising. He seems like a man who would regard ribbons as moral hazards with decorative edges. Still, he watches the square carefully, his ink-stained thumb rubbing against the side of his sleeve. You turn toward a tray of clay cups and pretend to admire one with heroic focus. It is lopsided and brown. You have seen prettier mud. The maid crosses near you then, close enough that the linen in her basket brushes your cloak. She does not look at you. She only murmurs, barely louder than the market's breath, "River Stairs afternoon bell." Then she is gone. Your heart gives one foolish little leap, which is inconsiderate of it, because you have no idea whether the message is for you, through you, or about you in some way that may end badly. The dog looks up as if he heard every word and disapproves of your posture. He may be right. A bell sounds from the church tower, not noon yet, but one of the lesser hours. Its note drifts across the stalls, over the wet awnings and the baskets of onions, over charms for love and remedies for boils, over badges bright enough to promise miracles and cheap enough to doubt them. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the whole market is a place of trade or a great breathing web of signs, prices, favours, and hidden speech. You buy a small beeswax candle, partly because it may be useful later, partly because standing empty-handed makes you feel too visible. The wax is golden and faintly honey-scented. The vendor wraps it in a scrap of cloth, and you tuck it safely inside your cloak with the blue silk thread. By the time you leave the square, the maid has vanished. The monk has turned toward the Abbey Lane, and the dog has acquired, by means unknown, a strip of dried eel. The town continues around you in its wet, watchful way, but every colour now seems to carry a meaning, and every bell seems to be counting down to the river stairs. You leave the market by a lane that smells of wet rope, cabbage leaves, and the river long before you see the water. Noon is still some way off, but clouds have lowered over the town, pressing the rooftops into a dim grey hush. Rain begins not as drops, but as a soft darkening on sleeves and stones, the kind that pretends to be mist until your cloak grows heavy enough to argue. The dog trots beside you with the dried eel held proudly in his mouth, as if he's been appointed royal standard bearer for smoked fish. You follow the slope down past warehouses and little fenced yards where hens shelter beneath carts. A cooper rolls a barrel under an awning. A woman empties wash water into the gutter and crosses herself afterward, perhaps because the water nearly hits your boots, or perhaps because all water in a medieval town deserves prayer. At the river stairs, the stone steps vanish into brown water moving thickly around moored boats. Ropes creak. A flat-bottomed ferry knocks against the quay. No maid waits there. No hidden lover stands under a hood. Only a fisherman mends a net with fingers red from cold, and an old man sells roasted chestnuts from a covered pan, though they are mostly steam and optimism. The noon bell has not rung. So you wait. Waiting is one of the great medieval arts. People wait for bells, for markets, for lords, for weather, for bread to rise, for carts to be repaired, for priests to finish speaking, for winter to decide whether it means to kill them. You lean beneath the narrow shelter of a riverside shrine, where a small painted virgin watches the water from behind a wooden screen. Someone has hung ribbons there, faded by rain and smoke red, green, blue, white, each tied to the lattice with prayers folded into the knots. A clay lamp gutters before the image, its little flame bending each time the wind slips off the river. The shrine smells of damp wood, candle soot, river mud, and old flowers gone brown at the stems. You light the beeswax candle you bought in the market and set it carefully beside the others. Its honey scent rises, soft and clean, almost startling in the sour air. A pilgrim badge lies at the Virgin's feet, left as an offering, its saint too worn to name. No one can quite agree whether such offerings invite grace, repay grace, or simply help frightened hearts feel less alone. Perhaps all three are true enough for a rainy noon. A woman beside you mutters a prayer for her husband, who has gone upriver with wool bales and more confidence than weather permits. She touches a charm sewn into her sleeve, a small packet of herbs wrapped in linen, rosemary for remembrance, perhaps, rue against harm, or just lavender to keep the sleeve from smelling like honest labour. Medieval remedies have a way of being medicinal, spiritual, and laundry-related all at once. Then the maid appears. She comes down the lane without haste, basket on her arm, rain gathering on her white coif. She does not step into the shrine. Instead she pauses near the chestnut cellar, buys one small twist of warm nuts, and sets it on the shrine ledge beside your candle. Beneath the folded paper lies a scrap of parchment no larger than 2 fingers. Your hand finds it when she has already moved on. There is no seal this time, only a line written in a narrow, tidy hand. Not here, Shrine Road. Follow the white thread. You glance up. The maid has crossed the quay and is speaking to the fisherman, her posture easy, her hands busy with linen. Nothing about her suggests conspiracy. This is perhaps the most suspicious thing of all. The dog sniffs the chestnuts, finds them less inspiring than eel, and sneezes on your boot. You tuck the scrap away and look toward the road beyond the river gate. A white thread has been tied to an iron ring at the edge of the quay, so fine it might be mistaken for cobweb. It leads not across the water but along the pilgrim road that runs beside the fields, past a row of willows and toward a wayside chapel beyond the town ditch. The noon bell begins then, heavy and slow behind you, counting over rain, roof, river, and all those lives pretending not to listen. You follow. The pilgrim road is no grand path, only packed mud between hedges, shining under rain. Your boots sink, lift, sink again. The dog keeps pace, though he pauses to investigate every puddle with scholarly intensity. A cart passes, its wheels groaning, its driver wrapped in a hooded cloak. He wears a little lead badge of St. Christopher pinned to his chest, guardian of travellers, river crossings, and anyone foolish enough to be outdoors in weather like this. Some swear St. Christopher's image protects one from sudden death for the day. Others say it merely reminds travellers to pay attention near deep water. Either way, it seems sensible. Ahead, the white thread appears again, tied to a thorn branch, then another, looped around the post of a roadside cross. Each piece is small, almost nothing, but together they lead you into quieter country. The town sounds fade until only the rain remains, tapping on leaves, whispering in ditches, pattering on your hood. At the wayside chapel, a stone building no larger than a cottage, you find fresh rushes scattered over the floor and a row of candles burning before a painted saint whose name has flaked away. A man stands inside with his back to you, wearing a plain, dark cloak. He turns at the sound of your step, and for a moment you think he is the secret lover. But he is old, with a lined face and a pilgrim's staff. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether he is a helper, a spy, or simply a man who has waited in too many chapels. He looks at the blue silk in your sleeve, then at the rain beyond the door. They will search the river, he says quietly, not the shrine road. The dog sits beside your muddy boot, still holding the eel like a sacred relic no one trusts. Outside, the noon bell fades into rain, and the hidden romance moves farther from the town than any letter has yet dared to go. You stand in the wayside chapel while rain beads along the edge of the doorway and falls in thin silver threads from the roof thatch. The old pilgrim does not give his name. In these parts, names are sometimes offered after bread, sometimes after trust, and sometimes never, which is inconvenient for storytelling but very helpful for staying alive in a town full of watchful shutters. He leans on his staff and studies the road behind you. The chapel is dim, smelling of wet wool, cold stone, and tallow smoke. Fresh rushes cover the little floor, not thick enough to make it warm, but enough to keep your boots from sounding too sharply. A chipped bowl beside the door holds pins, bent coins, and 2 tiny rings of twisted grass. Some swear that leaving a grass ring at a shrine can bind a promise until harvest. Others say it only proves that people in love will make jewellery out of anything if no goldsmith is nearby. They want the girl married by Candlemas, the pilgrim says at last. You wait, because questions have a way of making frightened people smaller. Outside, the dog finally drops the dried eel, looks at it, then picks it up again, apparently remembering his responsibilities. The wool factor's ward, the pilgrim continues, not daughter, ward. That is where tongues tangle. Her father died owing coin, and her mother died owing prayers, or so the town says. No one can quite agree whether debts are heavier when written in ledgers or whispered at funerals. The young woman behind the oak door comes back to you clearly, the ink-stained fingers, the faded green sleeve, the stillness with which she took the sealed letter. A ward is watched more closely than a daughter, sometimes with kindness, sometimes with calculation. She may inherit little, but she can still be married in a way that settles old accounts. Medieval households are full of such tidy arrangements, where a person's future is folded like linen and placed wherever the family chest has room. The pilgrim nods toward the road. The message must reach the manor before dusk. You look beyond him, to the wet track running between hedges toward higher ground. There, beyond fields and orchards, stands the manor hall belonging to the wool factor's kin, or perhaps to the family into which the ward is meant to be given. Those who tell the tale never fully agree which household claims the greater right over her. That is often how trouble grows, not from no one caring, but from too many people caring in useful, profitable ways. You follow the pilgrim until the chapel falls behind you. The rain softens to a grey mist. Fields open on either side, bare after harvest, ridged with winter furrows and dotted with crows. Near one hedge, a boy spreads muck with a fork while singing to himself, because apparently even manure improves when given music. In a cottage yard, a woman hangs damp cloth beneath an awning and pins little sprigs of rosemary into a child's cap to keep away coughs, bad dreams, and neighbours with opinions. It is hard to tell which affliction concerns her most. By late afternoon, the manor rises ahead, a long-timbered hall on a stone undercroft, its roof steep, its yard enclosed by a ditch and palisade. Smoke lifts from the kitchen range. Geese patrol the entrance with the stern confidence of minor officials. They hiss as you pass, and you give them space. Any age that relies on geese as alarms has already understood something important about suspicion. Inside the outer yard, servants move quickly between bakehouse, stable, and kitchen. A groom rubs down a horse with straw. A girl carries a tray of trenchers, thick slices of stale bread soon to bear meat or pottage, and afterward to be given to the poor, the dogs, or whoever has least power in the room. Near the well, an old servant sprinkles salt at the threshold, muttering that it keeps envy from entering with muddy feet. Even now, it is hard to tell whether envy fears salt. But no one seems eager to test the matter. You're taken into the hall as a traveller from the shrine road, and the old pilgrim becomes suddenly vague, which appears to be one of his chief talents. The hall is warmer than the chapel, though not warm enough to inspire gratitude without effort. Rushes lie over the flagstones, mixed with sweet herbs crushed underfoot meadow sweet, thyme, perhaps lavender. Beeswax candles burn along the high table, their flames steady in the thick air. Soot darkens the rafters above, and the carved screens at the far end divide the public hall from the private chambers beyond. It is behind one of those screens that you see her. Not fully, only the edge of a face through the wooden lattice, the pale oval of a cheek, the shadow of a coif, the green of a sleeve. She stands where noble and near-noble women may watch without joining, hear without being seen to listen. A carved lattice can be more powerful than a locked door. Through it, glances travel in both directions, but responsibility does not. Across the hall, a young man in the steward's livery bends over a chest of accounts. He is not richly dressed, yet his cloak is clean, his belt well kept, his hair damp from travel. When the woman behind the lattice shifts, he does not look up at once. That is how you know he has practiced not looking. A beginner stares. A frightened lover studies receipts as though wool totals contain salvation. A servant brings ale. You sit near the lower benches, close enough to smell pottage, wet leather, and the roasted onions waiting for supper. The pilgrim places something beside your cup, a folded scrap, marked with the tiny bird pressed not in wax this time, but drawn in ink. You do not open it. Not yet. At the high table, the master of the house speaks with a heavy man in fur, likely the cousin with land or the steward with debts, depending on which rumour has put on better boots today. They discuss Candlemas, dowry cloth, and the price of wool. They do not speak of love. Love, in this hall, must wait behind the lattice, silent as a candle shadow. Then the young woman's eyes find yours through the carved wood, and for one still heartbeat you understand that the letter has not ended its journey. It has only reached a room where every glance has witnesses. You keep your hands wrapped around the wooden cup and let the hall breathe around you. The young woman's glance has vanished behind the lattice, but it leaves the air changed, as if the candles now burn with a slightly sharper flame. At the high table, the master of the house continues speaking of wool, rents, and marriage portions with the solemnity of a man measuring cloth that somehow has a human heart folded inside it. Supper comes slowly, because medieval meals arrive not as one neat event but as a procession of bowls, trenchers, servants, spills, and quiet judgments. Pottage thickened with peas is ladled onto bread. A platter of smoked fish passes among the lower benches. Someone brings coarse salt in a small dish, guarded more carefully than you expected, for salt is costly enough to make even generous people suddenly precise. You eat what is given, and the dog, having followed you into the hall under the legal fiction that no one has noticed, sits beneath the bench with his bent ear lifted toward every falling crumb. The suspicious monk is not here, which should comfort you. It does not. Absence can listen too, especially when it has friends. After the meal, the hall shifts into its evening shape. Servants clear trenchers. A maid scatters fresh rushes over a sour patch near the door. The steward's young man closes the account chest with an iron key and gives it to a reeve, who hangs it from his belt with the importance of a person trusted with other people's problems. Then the manor court begins, not in grand ceremony, but with benches drawn closer, candles trimmed, and villagers stepping forward one by one to let their troubles be weighed beneath the rafters. You sit still, because a traveller who's eaten at a household hearth should look grateful, harmless, and slightly tired. Fortunately, you are all three. The reeve calls names from a strip of parchment. A tenant owes hens. Another has failed to mend a ditch. Two brothers argue about a boundary marked by a willow stump that may or may not be the original willow stump, and no one can quite agree whether the stump moved, rotted, or was improved by somebody with an axe and a guilty conscience. A widow complains that her neighbour's pig has broken into her kale patch. The pig is not present to defend itself, which seems unfair, though likely wise. This is the ordinary weight of village law: small debts, broken fences, stray animals, ale measures, marriage pledges, words spoken too loudly near wells. Yet beneath these plain matters runs the same hidden current you have followed since dusk. Who owes whom? Who belongs where? Who may speak? Who must be silent? A young servant girl is brought forward next, red-eyed and stiff-backed. She's accused of carrying messages between two households without leave. Not love letters, the reeve says, though he says it in a way that makes everyone think of love letters at once. A murmur goes through the lower benches. The master of the house lifts one hand, and the sound thins. Some swear that written messages are less dangerous than spoken ones, because ink cannot blush, stumble, or forget its story. Others know better. Ink can be hidden, copied, stolen, read aloud in the wrong room, and held up before neighbours until a private hope becomes public weather. The servant girl twists her apron between her fingers. She claims she carried only a recipe for a cough syrup made with honey, horehound, and ale. This may be true. It may also be the most medicinal romance in the county. The reeve asks who sent it. She says an aunt. He asks whose aunt. She says, after a pause, that many people have aunts. It is a brave answer and a foolish one. Around the hall, several men cough into their hands to hide amusement. The dog thumps his tail once, perhaps in legal approval. The master does not smile. He tells the girl that households are not to be crossed by secret errands, especially when marriage agreements are being discussed. At this, the young man in steward's livery lowers his eyes. Behind the lattice, something pale moves and stills. You do not look directly, but the room seems to lean toward that carved screen. It is astonishing how much attention people can give to something they are pretending not to see. The girl is fined a penny she almost certainly does not have. Her mistress will pay it and take it from her wages, which is the medieval way of making mercy feel like arithmetic. She backs away, cheeks burning, and the next case is called a brewer accused of selling ale too weak even for children. Pilgrims, and men who have already had 3 cups. The hall relaxes. Weak ale is safer ground than strong feeling. Still, the warning remains. You understand now why the letter slipped beneath an oak door, and why the blue silk came under the guest house threshold. A secret romance cannot simply fear jealous eyes. It must fear records, fines, guardians, dowry bargains, servants questioned by candlelight, and manor courts where private errands become public offences. Love may be sung about by fiddlers, but here it can be priced, redirected, punished, or married off before Lent. The folded scrap beside your cup waits like a coal under ash. When the court ends, people rise in slow clusters. Cloaks are gathered, benches scrape. The master withdraws behind the screens with the heavy man in fur. Servants carry candles toward the private chambers. The steward's young man lingers by the account chest, then passes near your bench without looking at you. He leaves a small iron key on the table, only for a breath. Then he takes it again, as if he has forgotten nothing and done nothing. But beside your cup lies a second object, now a splinter of pale wood, carved with 2 tiny lines crossing like a lattice. Even now, it is hard to tell whether you're being trusted, tested, or simply pulled along because you happen to be the sort of stranger no one has yet found time to blame. You slide the folded scrap into your sleeve with the silk thread and the market candles cloth. Above, the rafters hold their soot and silence. Outside, rain taps at the shutters. Somewhere beyond the hall, behind carved wood and family plans, a young woman waits in a chamber where every footstep matters. And beneath your bench, the dog rests his chin on your muddy boot, as if reminding you that all great secrets should be carried with caution, crumbs, and possibly fish. The manor settles late, reluctantly, like an old cloak being folded after rain. Doors close one by one beyond the carved screens. The last bowls are stacked. The hearth is banked under ash. Servants move through the hall with sleepy care, their shadows bending over benches, their hands gathering cups, crumbs, and the small wreckage of other people's comfort. You remain where you are for as long as a traveller may remain without becoming a question. The dog sleeps with his nose tucked beneath his tail. Though one eye opens whenever anyone comes near food, this is not suspicion, exactly. It is discipline. At last, a grey-haired servant points you toward a corner pallet near the lower end of the hall. You are given a wool blanket with a border worn thin and a smell of smoke so deep it may have belonged to the sheep. You lie down beneath the soot-black rafters while the rushes whisper under late feet. Somewhere behind the screens, a woman coughs softly. Somewhere outside, geese mutter in the yard like old men displeased by the moon. You do not sleep. The folded scrap in your sleeve grows heavier with every passing bell. When the hall darkens fully, you ease it out by touch. The parchment is creased twice, and inside, in the same narrow hand, are only a few words orchard before prime. Bring no flame, no name, no explanation, no helpful note saying whether you're expected to deliver comfort, warning, or stand quietly in a hedge like an underpaid shrub. Medieval instructions often assume everyone already knows the dangerous part. Prime will come after dawn, when the first clear light begins to gather and the monastery bells shape the morning. Before that, the world belongs to frost, milkmaids, thieves, and people in love. You tuck the scrap away and close your eyes, not to sleep, but to rest your face into stillness. Around you, the hall breathes in layers, a servant snoring, a log settling, the slow drip of thawing rain from some unseen roof edge. No one can quite agree whether winter nights are longer because of darkness or because every thought inside them walks more slowly. When the first paling of dawn presses against the shutters, you rise. The hall is blue with cold. Your fingers ache before they fully bend. Rushes cling to your boots as you cross the floor, and you pause only to let the dog lift his head. He considers you, considers warmth, then stands with the expression of one betrayed by destiny. Together you slip through the side door into the yard. Frost has laid a silver skin over everything. The well rope is stiff. The carts shine along their rims. Breath rises from the stable door, where horses shift in the straw, warm and enormous in the dark. A kitchen boy, already awake, carries a pail with both hands and does not look at you twice. In a place like this, servants see much and survive by sorting what matters from what must be forgotten. This may be the most useful education in the kingdom. Beyond the yard, the orchard waits under a low veil of mist. The trees stand bare and black against the whitening sky, their branches twisted like old writing. Frost rims each twig. Fallen apples lie collapsed in the grass, sweetening the air with a faint brown smell beneath the cold. You move between the trunks slowly, careful of frozen ruts. Somewhere a cock crows, then seems to regret the effort. A piece of blue silk is tied to the lowest branch of a pear tree. You stop beside it. The dog sniffs the trunk and sneezes, perhaps from frost, perhaps from moral concern. Some swear that orchards are lucky places for lovers because fruit trees remember spring even in winter. Others say they are unlucky because every village child, servant, and hungry bird knows how to find them. Even now, it is hard to tell whether this orchard offers shelter or simply a more scenic way to be discovered. A figure emerges from the mist. It is the young man in steward's livery. Without the hall's candlelight, he looks younger, thinner, and much less certain. His cloak is plain brown, fur at the collar worn down by weather. He carries no sword, only a small leather satchel pressed close beneath one arm. His eyes go first to you, then to the dog, then to the blue thread tied on the branch. Shikemi whispers, "You shake your head." His face tightens, but he does not break. He looks toward the manor where the roofs are just visible through the trees. She cannot leave by the women's stair if the aunt wakes, or if the reeve is near the storehouse, or if Brother Anselm has already sent word. Brother Anselm, you do not need to ask if he means the suspicious monk. A name settles over the man in your memory-narrow mouth. Ink-stained thumb. Listening eyes. It suits him well enough, perhaps unfairly, but medieval suspicion is rarely waiting for fairness to lace its boots. The young man opens the satchel and shows you what lies inside, not jewels, not coins, but a folded strip of parchment, a small comb carved from bone, and a white ribbon. The ribbon is plain, almost childish. He touches it with a reverence that makes the orchard seem warmer. "She gave me this at Martinmas," he says, "at the feast." Her sleeve caught on a bench, and when I freed it, the ribbon came loose. She told her aunt it was torn. It was not torn. This is the kind of romance the world rarely records, not a kiss beneath banners, not a knight singing below a tower, but a loose ribbon hidden for weeks beside account tallies. Still, his voice makes it clear that to him, the ribbon has the weight of a relic. A doubtful relic, perhaps, like the badge at the shrine or the dog's cherished eel, but sacred to the hand that holds it. A bell sounds faintly from far off. Not prime yet. Earlier, a warning bell from the abbey, or only the wind carrying another town's hour strangely across wet fields. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. Then she appears. The young woman steps from behind a line of old apple trees, cloak drawn tight, green sleeve hidden beneath grey wool. Her coif is plain, her cheeks pale with cold, and her ink-stained fingers are wrapped around a small bundle. For a moment neither lover moves. All the secrecy of letters, ribbons, songs, shrines, market stalls, and silent rooms gathers into that narrow space between them. They do not embrace. Not here. Not with frost brightening the ground and bells waking the world. Instead, they stand close enough for their breath to mingle. She gives him the bundle. He gives her the white ribbon. Their hands touch, and that is all. Yet in this cold orchard, under bare branches and a paling sky, it feels as dangerous and tender as any vow spoken before an altar. The dog sits between two frozen apples and watches solemnly, as if prepared to witness. Then from the manor yard comes the sharp cry of geese. The young woman turns at once. The young man steps back. You hear voices carrying through the mist, still distant but awake. The orchard has remembered it belongs to a household. The bells are coming nearer to prime. Whatever promises passed between them must now return to hiding. And you, with cold hands and mud on your boots, stand inside the secret as the first true light touches the trees. The cry of the geese cuts through the orchard like a rusty hinge being argued open by angels with poor manners. The young woman gathers her cloak with one hand, the white ribbon already hidden at her wrist. The young man closes his satchel so quickly the leather strap snaps against his fingers. You all stand very still, as if frost, mist, and bare branches might kindly mistake you for part of the scenery. The dog does not help. He rises, gives the geese a look of professional rivalry, and lets out one small bark. It is not loud, it is not heroic, it is, however, enough. From the direction of the yard comes a man's voice, then another. A stable door creaks. The geese continue their announcement, because geese believe all news improves through repetition. The young woman's eyes turn toward you, not pleading, not panicked, but clear with the dreadful calm of someone who's already counted every path and found most of them watched. The old storehouse, she whispers, behind the apple press. The young man shakes his head. They will look there first. No, she says softly, they look where a man would hide. No one can quite agree whether this is wisdom, bitterness, or simply the result of growing up inside a house where every cupboard has been inspected by an aunt. She steps away from him at once, moving not toward the manor, but sideways through the trees, toward a low shed half covered with ivy. You follow because standing alone in a frosted orchard with a guilty expression seems unwise, and because the dog has already chosen the same direction with irritating confidence. The shed smells of old apples, damp wood, straw, and the sour ghost of cider. A heavy press stands inside, its screw dark with age, its wooden trough stained from many harvests. Beside it are barrels, broken baskets, and a stack of folded hurdles. The young woman kneels behind the press and pulls loose a board near the floor. Behind it lies a hollow space, not large, but dry, lined with sacking. She pushes the satchel inside. Not herself, not the young man, only the satchel. Then she draws from her sleeve a small object wrapped in linen and presses it into your hand. "Take this to the abbey," she says, not to Brother Anselm. The cloth is warm from her palm. Beneath it, something hard and uneven rests against your fingers. Before you can ask, she has replaced the board, scattered a little straw before it, and stepped back into the orchard path with the posture of a woman who has merely come to inspect stored apples before breakfast, which is apparently a common and perfectly innocent pastime if one looks cold enough. The young man has vanished among the trees. You tuck the wrapped object into the inner fold of your cloak. The dog sniffs your hem and sneezes, which you choose to interpret as a blessing. Moments later, the reeve appears between the trunks, followed by a stable boy and a broad woman in a dark cloak who must be the aunt. Her face is sharp, her eyes sharper, and her wool hood is pinned so firmly beneath her chin that it seems less a garment than a legal statement. She looks at the young woman first, then at you, then at the dog. "What brings a traveller to the orchard?" her eyes ask. You make a small bow and lift one hand toward the frosted branches, as if admiring agricultural conditions at dawn is a habit of yours. This is not a strong defence, but it is better than explaining that you are carrying a secret relic and possibly assisting a romance with the help of an eel-minded dog. The young woman says, "The pilgrim asked the way to the Abbey Road." Her voice is steady. Too steady, perhaps. The aunt studies her, and for a moment the whole orchard seems to hold its breath. Some swear that liars look aside, while honest folk hold your gaze. Others swear the opposite. Even now, it is hard to tell whether anyone in this orchard believes anyone else, or whether belief is simply less useful than timing. The reeve checks the shed. He glances behind barrels, kicks at straw, and peers beneath the press. His hand passes near the loose board but does not touch it. Men often search for bodies, purses, weapons, and lovers. They do not always search for folded promises hidden lower than pride. At last he steps back, annoyed by finding nothing. The aunt says nothing at all, which feels worse. A bell rings from the manor chapel prime, bright and cold across the fields. The young woman lowers her eyes at once, as if obedient to the sound. The aunt takes her by the arm not roughly, but with ownership, and leads her back toward the house. As they pass, the white ribbon at the young woman's wrist slips for one breath from beneath her sleeve. The aunt does not see. The reeve does not see. The dog sees, naturally, because the dog misses nothing except instructions. You wait until the orchard empties before you move. Then, with the bell still trembling in the branches, you take the Abbey Road. The morning has brightened to a thin silver day. Frost melts into damp grass. Crows lift from the furrows with offended cries. You keep one hand against the linen-wrapped object inside your cloak, at a bend in the road. Beneath the thorn tree hung with old prayer rags, you finally unwrap it enough to see what she's given you. It is a relic case. Small, bronze, and badly dented, shaped like a tiny house with a hinged lid. Inside rests a sliver of bone wrapped in faded silk, along with a curl of parchment marked by the same little bird. The relic might belong to a saint, a beloved ancestor, a chapel mouse with excellent publicity, or no one holy at all. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. Yet the object matters. You feel that at once. Not because it shines, it does not. Not because it proves anything, it proves almost nothing. But because someone has trusted it to you in the hour between frost and discovery. Ahead, the abbey bell answers the manor bell across the wet fields, and you walk toward its sound, carrying a relic no one trusts and a secret that has begun to grow heavier than the road. You reach the Abbey Road by mid-morning, with the relic case resting against your chest like a small, dented question. The path rises and falls through wet fields where sheep graze with the patient sorrow of creatures wearing their own winter blankets. Your boots collect mud from 3 parishes, perhaps 4, and the dog keeps just ahead of you, pausing now and then to look back as if measuring your spiritual progress by the quality of your stumbling. The abbey appears beyond a low ridge, its tower pale against the clouds. Smoke climbs from the kitchen roofs. Somewhere within the walls, bells mark another hour, softer now than at dawn, and you feel the day settling into that strange middle space where secrets carried at night must survive the judgment of daylight. The little bronze reliquary does not grow lighter. If anything, it seems to have gained the moral weight of a bishop's purse. You do not go to Brother Anselm. That instruction is simple enough, though simple instructions are often the ones most likely to lead a traveller into a storeroom, a lie, or both. Instead, you find the old pilgrim near the abbey bakehouse, warming his hands over a vent where the smell of new bread escapes into the cold air. He looks exactly as he did at the Shrine Road, which is to say like a man who's been old for a very long time and has made peace with outlasting several arguments. When you show him the wrapped relic, his face changes only slightly. "Ah," he murmurs, "that old thing." This is not the reaction one hopes for when carrying a holy object through danger. A little awe would have been encouraging, a gasp, perhaps even a respectful cough. But the pilgrim only turns the dented case over in his palm and studies the bird-mark tucked inside. No one can quite agree whether the bone belonged to St. Mildred, St. Winifred, or a nameless martyr whose story was improved each time someone needed donations for roof repair. Some swear it once cured a fever. Others say it cured a debt, which may be the greater miracle. "It is not the bone," the pilgrim says. "It is the parchment." Before he can say more, footsteps sound near the bakehouse wall. He folds the relic away beneath his cloak and becomes, in a single breath, merely an old man admiring bread. You turn to see Brother Anselm crossing the yard, his narrow mouth set, his sleeves clean except for that stubborn darkness of ink near the thumb. He nods to you as though he expected you precisely here, and is disappointed not to find you more guilty. "Traveller," he says. You bow your head. The dog sits between you and the monk, wearing the solemn expression of a very small abbot. Brother Anselm's eyes move from your cloak to your hands to the old pilgrim, then to the bakehouse door. He asks whether you found the manor road passable. You say it was muddy. This is true, safe, and useless. The Holy Trinity of travel answers. The monk's gaze lingers. Mud carries stories. "So do monks," the pilgrim says mildly. For a moment, the yard grows quiet enough that you hear bread crackle as it cools inside the bakehouse. Then a kitchen brother calls for help with barrels, and the moment breaks. Brother Anselm turns away, but not far. You feel his attention remain like cold water beneath wool. By late afternoon, word comes that the manor household will visit the abbey for the vigil meal before a local feast day. This is not unusual. Feast days gather people the way puddles gather sky neighbours, tenants, merchants, minor gentry, pilgrims, and anyone who smells warm food. It also means the young woman, her aunt, the reeve, the master, the young steward, and perhaps every person with an interest in her future will soon stand under the same roof. The vigil feast is held in the abbey's outer hall, where lay guests may eat without disturbing the cloister's stricter silence. Servants spread fresh rushes thickly over the stone floor and mix in herbs to sweeten the crush of boots lavender, thyme, and something sharp enough to challenge damp wool. Long tables are set with trenchers, wooden cups, knives, salt dishes, smoked fish, boiled roots, beans, coarse bread, and a modest roast that draws every eye in the room with dangerous tenderness. Beeswax candles burn near the higher seats, tallow dips smoke near the lower, because even light observes rank. You sit among pilgrims and lesser guests, close enough to watch without seeming to. The dog rests beneath the bench, having learned that feasts are weather systems of falling food. The young woman enters with her aunt, grey cloak dry now, green sleeve hidden, face calm. The young steward stands among the household men, not near her, never near her. He holds a cup and looks toward the salt dish as if salt has become the moon. Music begins after the first cups, a harp, a low drum, a fiddle more obedient than the alehouse one. Conversation thickens under the rafters. Seating places speak in quiet code who is honoured, who is watched, who is close enough to influence, who is far enough to ignore. A shared cup may mean trust, a past trencher may mean courtesy, a glance may mean nothing, unless it means everything. Some swear that lovers can speak across a hall by touching cup rims, turning rings, folding napkins, or leaving crumbs in certain patterns. Others say this is nonsense invented by poets and servants who enjoy terrifying themselves. Even now, it is hard to tell, because when the young woman lifts her cup with her left hand, the young steward sets his down untouched. When she breaks her bread and leaves the lower crust on the trencher, he presses 2 fingers to his sleeve. When a servant passes between them carrying smoked fish, a folded scrap changes hands so quickly that the movement seems no more than candle flicker. Brother Anselm sees something, perhaps not the scrap, perhaps only the shape of secrecy. The old pilgrim leans near you and places the dented relic case beside your cup, hidden partly beneath a torn piece of bread. If he asks, he whispers, "You found it at the shrine." That is true. You murmur. "Good," he says. "Truth travels better when limping." Across the hall, the aunt laughs at something the heavy man in fur has said. Her hand rests lightly on the young woman's wrist. Not cruelly, not kindly, simply there. The young woman smiles at the table, and the smile is perfect enough to be armour. Then the harp changes tune. It is the swallow song from the alehouse, softened for the feast, tucked among courtly notes so that only those already listening would notice. The young steward does not look up. The young woman does not look over. Yet the candle between them gutters once, and the dog beneath your bench lifts his head. For one breath, hidden glances move through the hall like threads in a loom blue silk, white ribbon, inked bird, doubtful relic, half-burned candle, wet wool, all woven into something fragile and warm. And Brother Anselm begins walking toward your table. Brother Anselm crosses the hall with the slow, careful steps of a man who does not wish to appear hurried, because hurry admits desire, and desire is nearly always evidence of something. His shadow slides over the rushes. Candlelight catches the ink at his thumb. Around you. The feast continues in that half-aware way large rooms have when everyone senses trouble, but would rather keep chewing. You lower your gaze to your wooden cup. The dented relic case rests beside it, tucked beneath the torn bread, looking exactly like something that should not be there. The old pilgrim beside you begins eating beans with remarkable calm. Either he trusts heaven, or he has lived long enough to understand that beans are less suspicious than panic. Brother Anselm stops at your bench. "Traveller," he says again, as if your name is a tool he has not yet sharpened. You bow your head. The dog beneath the bench gives a low sigh, not a growl, more like a creature disappointed by the legal profession. The monk looks at the bread, the cup, your hands. You have come from the shrine road. I have you answer. And from the manor orchard, a spoon clatters somewhere nearby, not loudly, but enough. The old pilgrim keeps eating. The young woman across the hall does not turn her head. The young steward lifts his cup and drinks nothing. You let a small pause pass, because too quick an answer can be as guilty as no answer. The road bends by the orchard. Brother Anselm's mouth tightens. Many roads bend. Few travellers follow every bend. This is true, but not helpful. Medieval roads are less roads than long disagreements with mud, and they bend mostly because no one has yet persuaded them to behave. You consider saying this. You wisely do not. He reaches toward the bread. The old pilgrim speaks first. Careful, brother. That is a relic. Brother Anselm's fingers stop. For one small moment, the hall seems to lean in. Relics have that power. Even a doubtful relic, even a dented little bronze case with the saint of uncertain biography, can make hands hesitate. No one wants to be the person who casually mishandles holy bone, especially not in front of witnesses during a vigil meal, beneath abbey rafters, while holding a reputation for piety like a full cup on a rough cart. Brother Anselm looks at the pilgrim. Whose relic? Some say St. Mildred, the old man says. Some say St. Winifred. Some say the name was lost when the chapel roof fell in. Then why is it here? Because lost things travel, the pilgrim replies. No one can quite agree whether the old man is wise, evasive, or simply impossible to question without developing a headache. Brother Anselm's eyes narrow. He does not touch the relic case, but he bends close enough to see the little bird mark within. You feel the hall's warmth press against your back. Sweat gathers under your collar despite the winter cold. Then, from the high side of the room, the aunt calls for more ale. It is a small interruption, yet it breaks the line of attention. A servant hurries past with a jug. Someone laughs too loudly. The harp resumes after a missed note. Brother Anselm straightens, and in that slight turning of his head, the old pilgrim's hand moves. The relic case disappears under his sleeve as neatly as a trout beneath riverweed. Only the torn bread remains. Brother Anselm looks back. He knows something has changed. He cannot say what without admitting he was outplayed by a man eating beans, which would not enrich his dignity. He gives you one final look, the kind meant to make a person confess to sins they have not yet considered, then turns away toward the high table. Your breath returns slowly. The old pilgrim places something in your palm beneath the table. Not the relic case, a strip of parchment. You keep it hidden until the monk has gone far enough. Then, behind the shelter of your cup, you glance down. The writing is small, hurried, and beautiful. By candle end the poem must burn, not the bird, the poem. You feel the words more than understand them. The bird-mark, the relic case, the folded messages, these are covers, containers, shells. Somewhere there is a poem dangerous enough to destroy, or precious enough that destroying it is the only way to save the people named within it. Some swear that love poems in noble households are harmless games, copied from French songs and courtly tales by scribes who never expect them to matter. Others know that a poem can be proof, a name hidden in an acrostic, a private nickname, a reference to a ribbon, a window, a feast day, a promise beneath orchard trees. Ink can blush long after the face has learned not to. You look toward the lower end of the hall, where two scribes sit near a small side table, recording gifts, guest names, and abbey accounts. One is young, blinking with sleep. The other has shoulders bent from years of copying. A horn inkwell sits between them. Quills lie trimmed beside a knife. A sand shaker waits to dry fresh letters. Beeswax candles burn low, one nearly half spent, its soft golden wall sagging around the flame. The poem must burn by candle end. The young woman's ink-stained fingers return to your mind. Perhaps she wrote it. Perhaps the steward did. Perhaps a scribe copied it too carefully, admiring the shape of letters while failing to see that each line tied a noose of evidence. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. When the feast thins, people rise by degrees. The aunt draws the young woman away toward a side chamber. The young steward is called to help tally gifts near the scribe's table. Brother Anselm stands near the door, watching who leaves, who lingers, who pretends to search for a misplaced glove. You remain seated until remaining becomes stranger than moving. Then you stand, cup in hand, and drift toward the scribes as if drawn by nothing more dangerous than curiosity and warmth. The half-burned candle gutters beside their parchment. You drift toward the scribe's table with the careful aimlessness of someone who has absolutely no business there. This is a difficult performance, because the more innocent a person tries to appear, the more they begin to resemble a fox explaining why it has feathers on its chin. Still, the hall is busy enough to forgive you. Servants pass with cups. Guests gather cloaks. The harpist packs his instrument in a cloth case. The dog trails behind your heel, which does not improve your dignity, but does make you look like a harmless traveller beloved by questionable animals. The two scribes sit shoulder to shoulder beneath the low candle. The younger one copies names into an account roll, his lips moving with each letter. The older one sharpens a quill with a small knife, the blade bright as frost. Their table is crowded with parchment scraps, horn inkwells, a pounce pot, a sand shaker, and a flat wooden box for folded notes. Medieval writing is not a light matter. Ink must be ground, quills trimmed, parchment scraped, mistakes scraped thinner still, and every word made expensive enough to regret. The half-burned candle leans toward its own end. You see the poem almost at once, though only because you know to look for danger in beautiful things. It lies partly beneath the older scribe's elbow, a narrow sheet written in a graceful hand, each line too measured for accounts and too tender for business. At the left edge, the first letters fall in a vertical pattern. You do not read them fully. You do not need to. The first two form the beginning of the young woman's name, or perhaps her secret name, or perhaps a devotional word that would fool anyone who wished to be fooled. No one can quite agree whether love poems are meant to hide truth or reveal it. This one seems determined to do both. The young steward stands nearby, holding a tally cord. His face remains calm, but his thumb rubs the cord as if he might wear through the knots by fear alone. Across the chamber, Brother Anselm watches from beside a pillar. The aunt speaks with the master near the door. The young woman is not visible, yet the memory of her green sleeve seems to move through the candlelight. You reach the table and ask the younger scribe whether your name has been recorded correctly for the guest house. It is a dull question, therefore useful. The young scribe frowns and searches the roll, because scribes trust records more than faces, and faces more than travellers. As he turns the parchment, your cup tilts. A little ale spills. Not much, just enough to run across the table toward the pounce pot. The younger scribe gasps as though you have drowned a bishop. He snatches up the account roll. The older scribe pulls back his elbow. The poem slides free. The dog, perhaps inspired by Providence or the smell of ale, noses beneath the table and bumps your knee. Your hand moves, the poem folds, and the sagging candle flame kisses its corner. For one breath, nothing happens. Then the parchment catches. You drop it into the hearth ash beside the table as if preventing damage, which, in a sense, you are. The older scribe curses softly, then remembers where he is and turns it into a cough. The young scribe scatters sand on the ale. Brother Anselm steps forward. Too late. The poem blackens inward, curling like a dry leaf, its lovely lines becoming smoke. A few letters glow and vanish. The first name, if it was a name, lifts into the rafters with the rest. Some swear that burning written word sends them straight to heaven for judgment. Others say smoke carries secrets into every nose in the room. Even now, it is hard to tell which thought is less comforting. Brother Anselm looks at the ash, then at you. Clumsy, he says. Yes, you answer, with the weary honesty of a person who has often found this useful. The old pilgrim appears at your shoulder, a common flaw in travellers. The road shakes the grace out of them. The monk cannot argue with that without insulting roads, travellers, and possibly divine design. He lets you go, but his eyes remain sharp. Before dawn, the old pilgrim sends you through the abbey's postern gate with a heel of bread, a strip of cold cheese, and no explanation except the forest path is safer while mist still lies low. This sounds exactly like something said by a man who's not recently been in a forest. You walk as the world pales. The dog comes too, of course, because apparently your sins now require witnesses. The path enters trees beyond the abbey meadow, and soon the town, manor, and abbey bells become muffled behind branches. Mist hangs among trunks in long white veils. Oak, ash, and beech stand bare above you, their roots gripping black earth. Water drips from last night's rain. Your cloak brushes bracken gone brown with winter. Forests carry older fears than towns. Some swear certain trees remember vows spoken beneath them, and that cutting such a tree brings bad luck to weddings for 7 years. Others leave bread at hollow trunks for spirits, saints, or hungry children pretending to be either. Ravens call from the high branches, and the dog pauses, listening hard, as if translating. You think of the poem becoming ash. You think of the white ribbon hidden at a wrist, the blue silk knots, the wax bird, the doubtful relic, the candle guttering beside the scribes. The romance has survived one piece of proof, but daylight is coming, and daylight has a long habit of finding what darkness kindly covered. Ahead, the forest path bends into thicker mist, and somewhere beyond it, a cartwheel groans in the waking road. You follow the forest path until the trees begin to thin, and the mist loosens into pale morning. The groan you heard comes again, long and wooden, followed by a muttered complaint from a man who has clearly discovered that prayer does not replace a spare axle. A cart stands half sunk where the track dips near a ditch. One wheel has twisted sideways into the mud, its rim cracked, its spokes dark with wet earth. 2 oxen wait ahead of it with the empty patience of animals who know humans will eventually make the problem louder before making it better. A carter in a patched cloak kneels beside the wheel, hands muddy to the wrist. Beside him, a woman holds a bundle wrapped in sacking, and a boy tries to keep 3 hens from escaping a wicker cage. The hens are winning. This is one of the quieter truths of the age. Kingdoms may rise and abbeys may chant, but hens understand freedom better than most philosophers. You step closer and offer help, because on a muddy road, everyone belongs briefly to everyone else's misfortune. The dog trots ahead, inspects the wheel, then sits down with the air of a master carpenter refusing to work without better terms. The carter glances at you, then at your boots, then at the dog. Abbey Road, he asks. You nod. Man of folk behind, he says, best men quick. Those words settle heavier than the mist. Behind you lie the abbey, the burned poem, Brother Anselm's narrow eyes, and the hall where the young woman and the steward have learned to speak through silence. Ahead lies the open road. Between them, this broken wheel holds the morning still. No one can quite agree whether delays are accidents or messages. Some swear a stuck cart means the saints are warning a traveller to slow down. Others say it means the cart was built by a man who charged too much and seasoned his timber badly. Both explanations may be true in their own ways. You help lift the cart while the carter wedges stones beneath the axle. Mud sucks at your boots, wet wool clings to your knees. The boy recaptures one hen, loses another, and begins negotiating with it in a whisper, promising grain, warmth, and apparently moral improvement. The woman laughs under her breath and offers you a strip of coarse bread spread with soft cheese from her bundle. You accept, because refusing food on a cold road feels like arrogance against the entire human condition. As you eat, more travellers gather a peddler with tin spoons, 2 pilgrims with badges pinned to their hats, a shepherd carrying a lamb under his cloak, and an old widow with a basket of leeks who knows everyone's family, debts, ailments, and probable sins. She looks at the cart, then at the road behind, then at you. They say a love letter burned at the abbey last night, she murmurs. The cheese turns suddenly thick in your mouth. The peddler snorts. They say everything. Yesterday they said a man in Eastfield cured toothache by putting a live frog in his mouth. That works if the frog is frightened enough, the widow says. Some swear such remedies draw pain into the animal. Others, more practical, suspect the patient forgets the tooth because the frog has become the larger problem. Medieval medicine is full of moments where discomfort is treated by introducing a stranger discomfort and hoping the first one takes offence. The widow continues, voice soft as damp wool. A poem, perhaps, a name in the first letters, a ward promised by Candlemas, a steward's man with eyes too honest for his own good. The pilgrims glance at one another. The peddler pretends not to listen. The carter hammers the wheel pin harder than needed. Gossip has arrived without a horse, without a bell, without permission, and now stands among you like another traveller. You look down the road. Through the lifting mist, shapes move between the trees' riders or walkers, still far off. The dog sees them too. His ears rise. The broken cart becomes useful at once. The carter, perhaps from kindness, perhaps from dislike of manor officials, perhaps simply because every road worker respects a shared enemy in mud, pulls the cart crosswise while pretending to test the wheel. The oxen shift and block the track. The boys' hens scatter spectacularly, as if trained for sabotage. The widow drops her leeks. The peddler spills spoons into the rut, and for a few blessed moments the road becomes a small, muddy parliament of inconvenience. The approaching party slows. You see the reeve first, then a servant from the manor, then Brother Anselm walking beside a mule, his cloak dark at the hem. He looks over the cart, the oxen, the hens, the leeks, the pilgrims, the spoons, the dog, and finally you. There is recognition in his face, but not proof. Proof burned last night into ash. Road blocked, he asks. The carter holds up the cracked wheel rim, unless your mule can fly. Brother. It is a dangerous joke, but a quiet one. Brother Anselm's mouth tightens. The reeve curses the mud. The widow crosses herself and says that flying mules are unlucky before Lent, which is either a superstition or an invention born perfectly dressed. The delay stretches. Bells sound faintly from the abbey behind you, softened by distance. You keep your hands still inside your cloak, feeling the place where the blue silk thread rests against the market candle's cloth. Somewhere ahead, the old pilgrim's road must continue. Somewhere behind, the lover's secret is being hunted by men who understand ink, law, and family bargains better than mercy. At last, the wheel is set badly but well enough to move. The cart lurches forward. The road opens. Brother Anselm watches you as he passes, and in his eyes you see that he knows the romance is not ended. He simply does not yet know where it has gone. The dog slips beside you, muddy, satisfied, and carrying one stolen leek like a banner. You turn with the peddler and pilgrims toward the keep road, where torchlight will come early under winter cloud, and every hidden feeling will have to survive one more door, one more key, one more listener in the dark. You take the keep road beneath a sky that never fully brightens. The day hangs low and pewter-coloured, pressing its damp weight over hedges, fields, and distant roofs. Behind you, the broken cart creaks onward with its wounded wheel. The widow's leeks are gathered. The hens are mostly persuaded back into their cage, and Brother Anselm's eyes remain in your thoughts like ink that refuses to dry. The road to the keep climbs gradually, leaving the softer fields below. Frost still hides in the shaded ditches. Brambles catch at your cloak. The dog trots with the stolen leek in his mouth until even he seems to wonder what ambition led him there. At last he drops it beside a milestone carved with a weathered cross, and walks on as if abandoning all worldly vanity. By afternoon, the land changes. The hedges grow thinner. The cottages stand farther apart. A watchfire smokes on a hillock, and beyond it, the keep rises from a shoulder of stone, not a grand castle of songs and banners, but a hard square tower with curtain walls, a gatehouse, and narrow windows like suspicious eyes. Its stones are dark from rain. Its ditch is full of black water. A banner hangs limp above the gate, too wet to declare anything except misery. This is where family duty has heavier boots. No one can quite agree whether the keep belongs properly to the young woman's mother's kin, the cousin with land, or the lord whose steward keeps accounts for half the valley. Medieval property has a talent for becoming foggy exactly when a vulnerable person's future depends on it. What is clear is that the marriage agreement is to be spoken here before witnesses, near the strong-box, under keys, seals, and men who believe parchment can make a life orderly. You reach the gate near dusk, when torches are being lit under the arch. Smoke flaps sideways in the damp wind. A guard in a wool hood asks your business, and the old pilgrim, who has somehow reappeared beside the road as if grown from a hedge, says you're with him. This explanation appears to satisfy no one, but it is delivered with such calm exhaustion that the guard lets you pass, perhaps out of respect, perhaps to avoid further conversation. Inside the bailey, everything smells of horse breath, wet leather, smoke, iron, and boiled cabbage drifting from the kitchens. Men carry firewood. A laundress beats cloth in a tub despite the cold, her red hands moving steadily. A farrier holds a horse's hoof between his knees and mutters a charm over a bent nail before tossing it away. Some swear a crooked horseshoe nail can turn aside envy if buried beneath a threshold. Others say it mostly turns aside bare feet, which is also valuable. The hall within the keep is colder than the manor hall, though more richly lit. Torches burn in iron brackets. Beeswax candles stand on the high table, where important people prefer their light sweet and steady. Rushes cover the stone floor, but thinly, so each step sounds through them. Oak doors reinforced with iron bands guard side chambers. Keys hang from the belt of a watchman whose face suggests he trusts locks more than souls. You see the young woman near the hearth, seated beside her aunt. She wears the same calm expression from the feast, but tonight it seems paler, stretched tight beneath candlelight. A fur-lined cloak rests over her shoulders. At her wrist, no ribbon shows. Across the hall, the young steward stands among clerks and household men, holding a rolled parchment. He looks older than he did in the orchard, though only a day has passed. Secrets age people. So does bad sleep. And medieval bedding is not innocent either. At the high table sits the heavy man in fur, his hands folded over his belt. He smiles often, but not warmly. Beside him lies a small casket with a seal press, wax sticks, and a knife for trimming parchment. Near the casket rests an iron key. You remember the young steward's brief key on the manor table, the carved splinter of lattice, the poem turning to ash. Everything has become doors, locks, and things that may or may not open. The old pilgrim leans close. The bird must reach her before the seal is warmed. You glance at him. He slips the dented relic case into your hand again. Inside, beneath the doubtful bone, the little parchment marked with the bird remains folded tight. Not the relic, he whispers. The bird. Those who tell the tale never fully agree what is written on that hidden scrap. Some say it is a promise witnessed by the steward's former master. Some say it is proof of an earlier betrothal spoken before two servants and a priest too sleepy to remember the hour. Some say it contains only one line of the burned poem, the line that names the lovers truly, whatever it is. The young woman must have it before the agreement is sealed, or after tonight. Every whisper may become useless. The watchman with the keys begins moving through the hall, closing side doors. He is broad, grey-bearded, and more alert than his drooping eyelids suggest. He pauses near you, looking at the relic case. What's that? A saint of uncertain habits, the old pilgrim says. The watchman grunts. Aren't they all? This may be theology, fatigue, or keep humour. It is hard to know. A servant passes with cups of warmed ale. In the shuffle, you move toward the hearth, one slow step at a time. The dog slips beneath benches, ignored by everyone except a kitchen boy who points at him in recognition, perhaps from the manor, perhaps from the alehouse, perhaps because this dog has a wider social life than most knights. The young woman's hand rests on her lap, pale against dark wool. You cannot simply give her the case. The aunt's gaze moves too often. The watchman stands near the side door. The heavy man in fur calls for wax to be softened at the flame. Then the dog performs the only strategy he truly understands. He steals a sausage. Not a large one, not a noble sausage, but enough. A servant yelps. The kitchen boy lunges. The dog darts under the lower table, between boots, around a stool, and toward the hearth, with a speed suggesting years of criminal training. Laughter breaks from the lower benches. Even the watchman turns. The aunt's eyes flicker away. You step close, bowing as if to retrieve the animal, and let the relic case slide beneath the edge of the young woman's cloak. Her fingers close around it. The wax at the high table begins to soften. For one heartbeat, torchlight, iron keys, cold stone, family duty, and hidden ink all balance in the smoky air. The young woman does not look at you. She opens the case beneath her cloak, finds the folded bird, and hides it in her sleeve. The doubtful bone remains behind, innocent as old chalk. The heavy man in fur lifts the seal press. The young steward raises his eyes, and the watchman, who has heard too much and understood more than he should, looks from the dog to you, then to the young woman's still hand. His face changes, not with anger, but with the tired recognition of a man who has once, long ago, also waited for someone to pass him a message before a door closed forever. The watchman does not speak. That is the mercy of the moment, quiet and narrow as the space beneath a door. He only turns his head slightly, as if the stolen sausage deserves his full attention, and lets the hall spend itself on laughter, scolding, and the dog's triumphant retreat beneath a bench. You lower your hand, step back from the hearth, and feel your heart settling slowly, like a bird that has struck a window and somehow remembered the sky. At the high table, the wax softens over the candle flame. The heavy man in fur waits with the seal press lifted. The master of the manor speaks of witnesses, property, Candlemas, and suitable arrangements. His words move through the hall with the dull weight of stones placed one by one into a sack. The aunt sits upright beside the young woman, her fingers folded, her face fixed into the careful calm of someone who believes she is doing what must be done. The young woman does not move for several breaths. Then she lifts her hand to her sleeve. It is such a small motion. Anyone else might think she smooths the wool, or warms her wrist, or adjusts a hidden pin. But you know the bird-mark scrap is there. The steward knows too. Across the hall, his face remains still, yet his shoulders change, barely, as if he has heard a bell no one else can hear. No one can quite agree afterward what the scrap contains. Some swear it is a written promise of betrothal made before the young woman's father died, witnessed by a parish clerk whose memory was better than his courage. Others say it is proof that her guardian has no right to marry her before her debts are settled by the king's road tolls and wool accounts. A few whisper, more softly, that it is only a line from the burned poem, but a line so plain and true that even a hall full of practical people could not pretend it meant nothing. Even now, it is hard to tell whether law saves the romance, or whether romance borrows law's cloak for one cold evening. The young woman stands. The room changes. Cups lower. A servant freezes with the jug in both hands. The aunt turns to her sharply, but the young woman has already stepped forward, her green sleeve visible now beneath the grey cloak, her ink-stained fingers holding the folded scrap. She does not tremble. Perhaps she trembles inside where no one can fine her for it. She speaks softly, yet the keep seems built to carry quiet things. The watchman by the door lowers his eyes. The old pilgrim stands near the wall, hands folded over his staff. Brother Anselm, who's arrived sometime in the noise and shadow, watches from the archway with ink-dark thumb and unreadable face. The parchment is passed to the master, then to the clerk, then, unwillingly, to the heavy man in fur. Wax waits by the candle, sagging but unused. A seal not pressed is only a threat cooling in the air. There is no great shouting, no sword drawn, no dramatic thunder rolling over the keep, though a little thunder would have been convenient and perhaps well deserved. Instead, there are murmurs, legal frowns, a clerk asking for another candle, the aunt pressing her lips thin, and the old pilgrim clearing his throat exactly when silence grows too sharp. Medieval lives often turn not on battles, but on whether someone can prove a promise before supper grows cold. The young steward is called forward. He bows. He answers questions. He confirms a witness, a date, a chapel, a priest who dozed but did not sleep, a ribbon given openly enough to count and secretly enough to matter. Some swear the watchman remembers seeing them that night near the chapel door. Others say he only claims to remember because age makes a man kinder to young fools than to old arrangements. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. At last the seal press is set down. The heavy man in fur leaves before the final cup is poured, which is the medieval way of losing with dignity and damp boots. The aunt remains seated, very still, staring at the hearth. Perhaps she's angry, perhaps afraid, Perhaps she remembers a ribbon of her own, long vanished into someone else's decision. It is hard to hate her completely in the candlelight, and sleepier wisdom asks you not to try. The young woman and the steward do not embrace. They do not need to. He only bows to her across the hall, and she lowers her eyes in answer, the white ribbon now visible at her wrist. Around them, the keep exhales. The dog, having finished the sausage, sleeps beneath the bench as if he personally secured the future. Later, near the last watch of night, you step out into the bailey. The rain has stopped. Torches burn low by the gate. The stones shine darkly. Somewhere beyond the fields, monastery bells mark the slow road toward morning. The old pilgrim stands beside you, the doubtful relic case in his palm, empty now except for the little bone no one trusts. Was it truly a saint, you ask? He closes the lid. Tonight, it did saint's work. That seems answer enough. The keep grows quieter as the last candles shorten and fold into themselves. You find a place near the lower hearth, where the rushes are dry and the wool blanket smells of smoke, rain, and the long patience of old stone. Your boots rest beside you, heavy with mud from the town gate, the shrine road, the orchard, the forest path, and the keep yard, as if they have carried not only your feet, but every whispered promise of the night. Beyond the wall, the horses shift softly in their straw. The watchman's keys chime once, then settle. The dog turns in a small circle beneath the bench and sleeps with his nose tucked close, done at last with fish, leeks, sausages, and matters of the heart. Above you, soot-black rafters hold the dim warmth of the hall. The last torch in the passage gives a low golden flutter, and the darkness around it feels gentle now, not empty, only resting. You think of the oak door at dusk, the blue silk knots, the shrine candle, the frosted orchard, the burned poem, the bird hidden beneath a saint's poor bone, and the white ribbon at the young woman's wrist. None of it becomes simple. Old stories rarely do. They soften instead, until danger becomes memory, and memory becomes something warm enough to hold without fear. The bells far away mark another hour, slow and kind. The medieval world folds itself down around you, wet fields, quiet chapel, sleeping market, cold river, closed gate, warm ash. You do not need to follow any more roads tonight. You do not need to carry any more secrets. The fire lowers, the hall darkens, and the long stone night breathes beside you. So you let your eyes grow heavy, you let the last candle blur, you let the story drift into darkness, soft as wool, quiet as falling ash, safe as a promise kept until morning.